So in other words, it's what's the difference between relevant, transient happiness and absolute happiness? How do you stay happy through all the trials and tribulations of life? For instance, here's an example. Say I win the lottery today. I'm going to go buy my ticket, by the way. And I get to buy the big mansion I'm always dreamed about. I'm so happy. And then I make some really bad investments, and guess what? I lose all my fame and fortune, and everything. And now what? How am I going to stay happy? All right, so I got a couple of suggestions for you. Happiness means to stay in a high life condition through all the trials and tribulations of life. And I learned in psychology school this little saying that I keep telling myself over and over again: how you relate to the issue is the issue. All right, so a lot of people have issues, but they don't make a big issue of them, or they stay happy through them. How do they do that? I'll start with the Kundalini Yoga teaching. There are 7 steps to happiness. The first one is commitment. Commitment to kindness and compassion. And that leads way to character. Number 2, which is a pattern of behavior. And I see you looking at your notes. It's not on there. I haven't gotten to that part yet, folks. All right, and then number 3 is would lead to dignity when you act as in service to others. And then number 4 is divinity, when you put yourself and your life on the line to serve others. Number 5 is grace, when you have developed a presence that works so you have the power to sacrifice. So that leads to number 6, which is sacrifice, service to others. And that leads to the ultimate step, happiness, gratitude, for the chance to be all these things. I've also studied another discipline of thought, the Forum. The Forum says that life is empty and meaningless. It's empty and meaningless, it's empty and meaningless, and you bring the meaning to it. I like to think about that from time to time also. So now let's go on to your notes there. The teachings of the Buddhist Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra supposedly was the last teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha. And I believe Ernest Holmes studied his teachings, because I found a lot about cause and effect in our book, Living the Science of Mind. So I invite you to look up cause and effect in there and read more about it. So cause and effect is at the root of the teachings of Buddhism. And in Buddhism, they teach that there are 10 worlds that lead to absolute happiness. So we're going to examine those 10 worlds. And by the way, I'm a docent at Lotus Land.
Oh, wow.
And so I get to explain the lotus flower to people who visit there when I'm doceting. The lotus flower exemplifies our path to happiness. All right, so why is that? Well, the lotus flower grows out of the mud, and it needs the mud to grow. So the mud exemplifies our obstacles in life. And you've got your diagram here. You see the muddy waters, which are obstacles. Everything below the mud would be something like bankruptcy, sickness, maybe a traffic ticket, divorce, death of a loved one. Those are really serious obstacles in life. So how do we stay absolutely happy through all these obstacles? Also, the lotus flower has properties of a human, in that the flower closes up when the sun goes down, so it can sleep, and then the flower opens up in the morning with the sun, just like we do. We need our rest. And then also, the lotus flower exemplifies the eternity of life, life everlasting. In that, and this is scientifically proven, when the seeds are laden from the lotus flower and then planted maybe thousands of years later, they blossom into the most perfect flower on earth. It's said the lotus flower is the most perfect flower on earth. I like to believe it is. It's certainly a beautiful flower. So, Buddhism uses the lotus flower as a symbol of how to attain absolute happiness. And so let's look at the 10 worlds of Buddhism. So we've come up out of the muddy waters into the first stage, or the first world of happiness. And that would be the world of hell. Just like in the example I gave you. What if I lost my house? Would I be in a world of hell? So the world of hell, in other words, the flower has, well, the lotus flower, let me backtrack a little bit. The lotus flower needs the mud. Unlike some of the other water lilies, their roots flow freely in the water. But the lotus flower really needs this mud to grow out of. So the mud really gives us our power to learn and our power to make choices to stay happy. So hell would be like, well, you know what it's like to be unhappy, in despair, depressed. All right. So then we grow up, the lotus flower grows up a little further on its stem to level number 2, and that's a level of hunger, the world of hunger. And in the world of hunger, you get just the basics of life. Like, for instance, you might have enough food to survive. You might have a place to live, but maybe just the bare minimum. And then going on up to the next level, the third level, that's the world of animality. So in the world of animality, you have survival instincts. You have no sense for reason or reality, however. And it's the law of the jungle. You take advantage of others to survive. They take advantage of you. And you look up to people that maybe have more, and you're jealous, you're envy, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the world of animality. So we want to grow a little higher, following the stem up, to get higher and higher toward the sun. So our next world would be the fourth world, and that would be of anger. So anger is a state of selfish ego. We value only ourselves. We're attached to our superiority. We believe we're superior to others, and we hold others in contempt. So that's not a very fun, happy state. Stay there, I don't think. So let's grow a little more to level 5, and that would be the world of humanity. So in reaching for the sun, getting out of all these lower worlds, we begin to use reason and control for our instincts. We discern right from wrong. And we begin to act in a more human fashion. We begin to experience love and joy. And you experience some balance in your life. However, your ego mind will still creep in with negative thoughts. So let's grow a little more to the world of rapture, or heaven. I find it interesting that the Buddhists put heaven in the middle of the 10 worlds. And how do they define that? Well, heaven or rapture is a more intense joy. For example, we experience obtaining something we longed for or desired, like the new house, in my example. Any happiness in this state is governed by happenstance. In other words, I just happened to win the lottery, all right? So it's outside of me. I'm sort of being jerked around or given happiness from not inside of me, but outside of me. So that happiness can be transient. Like in my example, I lose the house. Now what? All right, so let's grow a little more into the world of learning. And in learning, this is where we're beginning to be really happy. We're really happiest when we're learning new things. When we're learning, we call ourselves truth seekers. And we're really happiest when we're learning about the truth of who we are. So we read and study other people's teachings. And this makes us happy. It gives us an excitement about learning new things. And going on up to the 8th world in Buddhism, that would be realization. And that's the aha moment. This is the state where we realize our own truth, the truth of who we are, independently of other people's teachings. We learn, or we have a knowing that about our truth, and that's consistent no matter what happens to us. We have that unshakable happiness. So the new house doesn't define who I am. I'm defined by my inner core, by what's inside of me, the truth of who I am. And that's what we say in Kundalini Yoga too. We say Sat Nam. Sat means truth, Nam means your identity. So truth is my identity, or my truth sees your truth. So Sat Nam. Beautiful saying. All right, so now we've grown all up to the 9th level, which is the level of almost absolute happiness. It's that level of compassion. And the Buddhists call themselves bodhisattvas. We become compassionate for ourselves first, and then compassionate for others. And it's really important to remember to have compassion for yourself first, because we really can't be compassionate for others until we have compassion for ourselves. So we realize that happiness can be transient in those lower worlds. Our greatest happiness comes from the altruistic behavior, which is that of service to others, expecting nothing in return. So that's just doing random acts of kindness, or being kind to yourself and expecting nothing in return. We transform our selfish actions into being of service to others. The state of service and gratitude leads us to the 10th world, which is absolute, unshakable happiness. So in the Buddhist philosophy, they call that enlightenment. So we're enlightened, we have absolute happiness. The lotus flower stretching far up out of the mud is rooted in the mud, as I said, because we need those obstacles to grow. Those obstacles make us grow. So the obstacles that put us in a state of hell are there to encourage us to learn and grow. The lotus flower is said to be the most perfectly beautiful flower on earth. When we live in the top 4 worlds, we have a high life condition no matter what happens to us. We are divine beings having a human experience. You've heard that saying here this morning. Muriel quoted that. We have a knowing and a contentment about our life. We are divine beings having a human experience full of infinite wisdom and infinite compassion. You have obtained unshakable happiness when you can go through life in those 4 upper worlds. And the 4 lower worlds on this diagram of life are called the 4 evil paths in Buddhism. That would be hell, hunger, animality, anger. And the bottom 6 worlds, that would be from, the bottom 6 worlds, are ruled by earthly desires and governed by ever-changing environments. But the top 4 worlds are called the 4 Noble Truths. And that's when we live in the top 4 worlds, we transcend the uncertainties of life. We are not swayed by the transient things that might happen to us. That's when we have unshakable happiness. The truth is, we are always going up and down the scale in the 10 worlds. The goal is to try to stay in the higher worlds and stay in your true happiness. So if we apply the principle of science of mind, change your thinking, change your life, we hear that all the time here, I invite you to choose up and live in the top 4 worlds of learning, realization, bodhisattva, compassion, and Buddhahood, or absolute happiness. When we are learning, we realize the truth of who we are. When we serve others with compassion, we bring great happiness to our lives. again, I quote, "How you relate to the issue is the issue." And so I want to read you, maybe some of you have heard this old Cherokee parable, which is a story, a great favorite of mine. So it's a great story to pass on to your kids, and a great lesson to be learned by all of us. So it's a story about an old Cherokee chief. One evening, an old Cherokee told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside of people. He said, "My son, the battle is between two wolves inside of all of us. One is evil, and that evil is anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other is good, the good wolf, and that's joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." And the grandson thought about it for a minute, and then he asked his grandfather, "So which wolf wins the battle?" And the old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." So that's something to think about. A good story to tell your children, right? And then I always love a quote by Gandhi. He says, "The best way to find yourself, your true self, is to lose yourself in the service of others." So with that, I thank you for listening this morning.
Oh,
I set on my truth is all of your truth. I love our music here. We're going to invite EJ back up, I think, right?
Yes, thank you.
I think you're going to sing a happy song. But I wish you all absolute happiness through all the trials and tribulations of life.
Yes.